Hey everybody, how are you doing? Welcome to On Mission, and my name is Quentin Florence. So you may say to yourself, what are these videos about? Well, I can tell you this video is for anyone who feels that they have been called by the Lord to the mission field. Now, the mission field can have many different meanings for you depending on your skill set, what's going on in your life, and really the overall purpose that God has for you. My mission field is a little bit different. So I'm going to go through this video, tell you a little bit about myself, and then give you some tips and tools that you can use that help you strategically plan the steps you need to take in order to fulfill the calling that God has on your life. So I told you that my name is Quentin Florence. I've been a member here at Victory for around 10 years now. I can't believe it's been that long. But my life right now looks very different than it did when I became a member 10 years ago. To give you a little background of myself, I went to the University of Georgia, God's College, right? Make sure you remember that. While at UGA, I knew I wanted to be a doctor. My whole life, ever since I was a teenager, I said, I'm going to be a doctor of some sort. Didn't know exactly what type of doctor, but I knew I was going to do it. Well, lo and behold, the Lord gave me the desire of my heart. I got my undergraduate degree, and then I went and I became a doctor of philosophy with a focus on biochemistry. So I became what you would call a scientist. I've done everything. I've manufactured vaccines. Please don't ask me about that. I have made drugs as well as diagnostic kits. And in doing that, I thought I had reached the dream that I had for my life. So every goal that I set, I accomplished. Everything that I told my wife I was going to do, I did. And we made plenty of money, but I was miserable. And I couldn't figure out why. And I'm going to take you back a little bit to when God really called me into what I'm doing now. So I've lived in Atlanta and I worked in Athens. And one day, both of our cars broke down. So there's no way I'm getting to Athens, Georgia from Atlanta without a car. Well, God said, I want you to take a walk. So I told my wife I had to call out of work. Don't know how long I'm going to be out of work, but I'm going to go and I'm going to take a walk around our neighborhood. And as I was walking around our neighborhood, there were a lot of trees where we lived, a lot of birds, and I was just admiring what God created. And I'll never forget, this is one of only 2 times in my life that I heard the audible voice of God. He told me, Quentin, I want you to quit your job. Now, let me give you a little context. I had a daughter who was 6 months old. I just bought a new house. And I had debt, a lot of debt. And the Lord was telling me to quit my job. And I said, there's no way. Like, what do you mean? And, he tells me, I've called you to something different. So this was my moment where he was calling me out. But, I know you want me to say I had all the faith in the world and I just did it. No, I tested our God. And I said, God, if I'm going to do this, by the time I walk back home and tell my loving wife, who is the mother to a 6-month-old, who just bought a new house with me, that I'm going to quit my job without anywhere to go, without any other income coming in order for me to do this, you have to have her completely in line with me. And she just has to say, okay. And so I walked back home knowing that my wife would say, there is no way you're leaving your job. And, like we all do, telling God what I was going to do and how he was going to do it. But I walk in the house and I say to my wife, well, God's told me to quit my job. And I kid you not, this had my mouth drop to the floor. She goes, I agree. I think you should go ahead and write your resignation letter. So I had like a 90-day plan and how, I was going to save up so much money before I quit my job. But I told the Lord, if my wife was in line, I was going to go ahead and do it. So I wrote my letter that day of resignation and turned it in and quit my job. And I remember crying. I remember being confused, not understanding what God wanted from me, but I knew he wanted something different. And so you may be watching this video and you say, hey, maybe God's calling me into the mission field. Maybe there's something that I am not doing that God really wants me to stop and change, the course of how I'm living my life. You may not have the drastic step of quitting your job, and really stepping out on faith. Yours may be more subtle, but I want to give you some practices that a mentor of mine helped me put in place in order to actually walk through this season when I was transitioning into my calling. And so with this video, there are going to be some worksheets that you can go through. They're going to be about setting the proper goals and actually executing them, about truly assessing if God and Jesus are at the center of your life. And then what those are ultimately leading to is a strategic life plan, which is the document that you're going to want to fill out so that you can ensure you are living out the purpose and calling God has on you. And so as I jump back into my story a little bit, I want you to understand where I was at. The following Monday after I quit my job, I was sitting in my house. I dropped my daughter off at daycare, and I said, okay, God, what do you want me to do? I know I'm not going to be a stay-at-home dad. I know I'm not going to, not be involved in the business world. I just have no clue what to do. And God gave me the name of one of my mentors. His name is Bruce Witt, and Bruce is the creator of the content that we'll be going through. And he told me to reach out to him. And so I went to a Newk's Cafe. Shout out to Newk's, very good salads. Went to a Newk's Cafe and sat down with Bruce and told him where I was at, how I quit my job, and I was so scared and so didn't know what I wanted to do. And he goes, well, I actually have some material you should start going through. And the first thing we went through is how to set proper goals. And that's using the GROW planning model. So if any of you all are from the business world, you understand that how the GROW planning model works. In this model, you set a specific goal. You look at the reality of actually achieving those goals. Then you assess what are the obstacles, the opportunities, and the options that you have in order to obtain the goal. And then you really come down to what you're going to do, like the actually execution of what you're going to do. And so what I did is I walked myself through that process where I've quit my job. My goal is to figure out, what am I going to do next, right? And so the first thing we get to do as believers in Christ is we get to go to our word and our scripture. And I'm not going to bore you. It's another long story, but I went into, a deep study with God, and he called me into the investment management space. Yes, the look on your face is exactly how I felt. I had a degree in science, and he was calling me into investment management. What is that? So investment management, just to let you guys know, they are the guys who you see on TV that none of us like, right? They own private equity firms, hedge funds, venture capital firms. So these are people that take in, a lot of money, and then they invest it in different things in order to help it grow. So I was really confused because the Lord was calling me into a field that even I had frowned upon before, and I didn't understand why, but I just knew this is what I had to do. And so the first thing I had to do is deal with the reality. God says go into the investment management space. Here's the reality. I never took a class on investment management. I didn't know anyone in that field. I was not connected to anyone. And other than Google, I had no clue how you even begin doing it. And so that creates the obstacles, right? Once you dive into investment management, the first thing it says is you need a degree in finance. Didn't have one of those. Then it says you need to be connected with high net worth individuals or who are very successful. Yeah, no, it's not my family, not our background. That's not what we had in place. And then it finally came across my first opportunity. It said you need to be involved with organizations where people in those spaces go to network. I can do that. And so that was my first step. I got connected to many of the organizations in Atlanta where all the investment management professionals would come together, talk about their industry, talk about what is going on and the trends that they could see. So that was my first opportunity. The second thing I began doing while at those meetings is networking and trying to find out, are there individuals I could connect with in the field? And then the Lord said to me, hey, you go to Victory Church. Have you ever thought about asking around to see if anyone at the church is involved in the investment management space so you could connect with them? And so I did that. Then, after assessing those opportunities of connecting and networking with people and meeting with them, I was able to look at what are my options. So really it boiled down to two options. I had a degree in biochemistry. I was an expert. I told you guys that I manufactured things and all in the biotech space. The only biotech investment management firms really that someone with my background could work for were either in San Francisco or Boston primarily. Some in Nashville, but those are smaller and they tend to not hire as many PhDs. The other option was start your own firm. Needless to say, the second option, I was like, there's no way that's what you want me to do, God. So I went that same test I did with my wife. I went to my wife and I said, baby, do you want to move to San Francisco or Boston? Resounding, nope, we're not going to do that. And so I had to go back to God again. You have to start your own investment firm. And so I had to go and work the GROW model again. I'm not going to walk you through it, but eventually that led me to starting my own private equity firm that was focused on biotech investments. And so you may be sitting here and God has called you to go be a missionary overseas. And you want to be on mission, let's say in a country like the Philippines. Well, I suggest you go through this GROW model. You walk it through. What's your ultimate goal? To be a missionary in the Philippines. Well, let's be realistic. Do you have a passport? Do you know anyone who is a missionary? Are you connected with the on mission ministry here at Victory so you can receive the tools and necessary contacts you need in order to implement this? Then look at your obstacles, your opportunities, and then it will lead to your options, and ultimately it will lead to the what, the W, the action step that you have to take. Using the GROW model and setting realistic goals is a great way to get started when you hear a calling from God. Can I take a break?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Mic back on. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
All right. So after you get down using the GROW model to set some initial goals for yourself, the next best thing.
Hang on. We're gonna pause.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You're
It
good.
fell.
Oh, you're good. Do we need to change anything?
Bloop.
Hold on, is this a plug-in?
No, that is not.
Okay.
Do you need a plug-in?
Yes, they do need a plug-in, but it's no big deal.
There's one over there by my backpack that you may have to scooch.
Let's see here, where's your backpack?
Oh, over there. Yeah. You have to roll over.
Bye. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Take your time.
I'm-
I actually
This
wrote.
guy fits the other way.
okay,
I
yeah.
wrote a full outline, so I know
there
where I'm
we go.
at.
Oh, it's good. Love it.
This isn't your first room.
Yeah, clearly.
I
You
know.
can use the desk. We
I
can
know
shrink
where
it
I'm
down.
Oh, no, I don't need all that.
Oh, you just want to plug in?
Yeah, I'm just gonna plug in right here and
Okay.
do it. On a side note, your chair is awesome.
Isn't it the best? Oh my gosh, I love that chair. It's Wayfair too. Which, you know, Wayfair isn't always, okay, so like that chair is Wayfair and it's incredible. This thing over here is also Wayfair and it's already falling apart. I bought it in
Really?
October, November.
Oh, wow.
And like
Wow.
literally this drawer face just pulls right off now. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, you know, some Wayfair items are wins and some are not. Definitely not this. Sorry, pause.
No, you're good.
Fight with the drawer. Okay. No, we'll just take him out. We'll just take him out. I'll fight with him later. Slide him right here. But yeah, some Wayfair finds are better than others, clearly. And the seat and the arms come up. I
Pull
love
out
my
of
chair.
The room and into my car. Don't think it's. Just mind your business.
Sorry, I do love my chair. Okay. One more time. Are we good?
Yeah.
Cool. Go for it.
All right, so now you understand how to use the GROW model to start setting some initial goals. And I'm going to give you a sidebar. One of the things that I struggle with when it comes to videos by believers, and you know, I'm guilty of this, is when people say, God called me to do this and everything was great. Yeah, that's not the reality of how I've experienced in my life. And one of the things that I didn't realize when I ran the GROW model and set my initial goals was when you go out and you walk in the full calling that God has for you, there's an attack that comes with that. And so you have to make sure that Jesus and the Lord are the center of your life. And so I'm giving you this out of order of how it happened in my life, but I'm going to tell you why. The second sheet that you have that came with this video is called a life assessment and life balance sheet. The reason why this is included and the reason why this is so important is because you actually have to sit down and have a realistic conversation with yourself. You know how when we talk about, we say, here's our goal, but let's deal with reality. So many times we deal with the reality of the situation, you know, so we deal with the reality of God has called me into the investment management space. What I didn't do a good job of doing is dealing with the reality of where is Quentin at in his walk with the Lord. And I paid the price dearly. And so this next sheet, I want to emphasize to you, it's really short, it's really easy to do, but pray into it and ask God to open up your heart to give you the reality of, are you truly walking where God wants you to go? So God tells us in Jeremiah 29:11, and I was one of those people that will walk around saying this all the time, but it says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And that sounds great. But here's the key to that. It says, for I know the plans I have for you. The Lord knows the plans he has for you. If you do not submit to him and make him the center of your life, he can't give you those plans and execute on them. So that's what this assessment is all about. When you go through and you do a life assessment, the areas that we really want to take a look at is you want to start with your money and finance. That's the area that I failed at that we'll get to. Then you look at your work and your purpose. Does it totally align at what God wants you to do? Then you look at your success and your significance. Your significance? Are you trying to be successful because you're trying to prove something to someone, or because you're trying to do something that makes you feel that you're more significant in others? Or have you truly submitted your success and significance to the Lord so that he can define for you what those are? What are you doing with your resources, right? We're going to assess that. That's separate than money and finances. And then your circumstances and challenges and your relationships. How do all of these look, and have they aligned with what God has called you to do? So I'll give you a little bit more of my story. So I told you that God, through working the GOLD method, I was like, hey, I feel like I have been led to starting my own biotech focus private equity company. Let me say that again. Starting my own biotech focus private equity company. And so what is private equity? In private equity, what you do is you find a company. It's a great company. You like the products. You like how it's growing. You go in, you buy that whole company, you grow it, and then you sell it again. And you do that over and over, and you make a lot of money doing it. And I truly, after doing this assessment too late, realized that's why I decided to start a private equity company. God told me to be in the investment management space. I found what I thought was the highest revenue generating way to do that, which is to go into private equity. I had not fully submitted it to God. If I had submitted it to God and done this assessment when I looked at my money and finances, I would have realized that I was carrying with me from my entire life that I had to be the provider. I didn't trust in the fact that God had called me into something, so he would be the provider. So just submit everything totally to what he tells me to do. And then the other thing I had to realize, when it comes to relationships, God was calling me into a space where I couldn't take majority of my relationships with me. A lot of my friends from college, a lot of my friends that I worked with, we didn't see eye to eye. I come from the science world. You can imagine people's belief in the Lord is not the same as that we see every day when we come to Victory and we work with all the wonderful people here. So the Lord was showing me how I had to break away from many individuals that I thought would be in my life forever. And that was hard. It was hard to realize that, man, I've been a believer. I've been a member of Victory at that time for about 4 years. Been in small groups, doing everything, but my heart wasn't pure. I was still looking out for myself, even though I had answered the call, right? God stopped me and he called me, and I answered the call, but I still had healing to do. And that's what I was able to realize when I did this assessment. When I assessed, had I submitted the provision for my family to God, I truly realized, no, I hadn't. And I had to stop and think of, okay, if God's going to be the one who provides, now what are the steps I'm going to take? And so I went, and, this wonderful wife of mine that you guys are going to hear about, and she's going to kill me because I haven't said her name. Her name is Natalie. So if you see her, she works with the events ministry here at Victory. So make sure to wave at her for me. But had another conversation with her where she was like, well, Quentin, you have to trust that if God's calling you somewhere, then the resources you need will be there. And so that first business I formed, I had a partner. Ended up that partner left, and it was disastrous because I had invested a lot of money because that's what it takes to ramp a business up. But while doing this assessment, I realized, no, the Lord needs to take this business away, and I need to be okay with it. And, you know, in true fashion for God, what did he do? That business left. I felt like I was right back where I was when I first left my job, and I felt like a failure. I was like, God has called me. I started a business. My partner leaves. God tells me that's exactly what he wants to happen. And then I go pray to him and he says, I want you in the investment management space. This is not adding up. I was like, God, there's no way I can do this. Like, I don't understand. And, you know, I reworked my grow model, kept going through it. And I will be honest, I was so frustrated at that time that I couldn't get the specific goals that I needed. But the one thing that happened when I did this life assessment, I had broken away from bad relationships. And I had become closer with many of the guys that I had met in the business ministry here at Victory. And during one of those ministry meetings, there was a guy who at the time was the CEO of Herndon Capital. And Herndon Capital is a hedge fund. I think it was around $10 billion at that time. And I just met this gentleman one day at that meeting. We exchanged cards and, you know, kind of moved on like many of us do when we pass by people in church. But while I was doing this assessment and while my other business shut down, I felt the Lord say, hey, reach out to this guy. And so I gave him a call and we met for breakfast. He has a great story. His name is Doug Vanderlyn. I'm sure you'll hear it one day, but Doug actually had to leave his company and then was let go by the next company that he worked with. So we actually had met each other at a point where we both were without a business and without a job and trying to figure out what to do. And God had brought me to someone with over 30 years of experience in the investment management space. And so obviously my mind went to, do you need a partner? Do you want to start this together? But I felt the Lord say, you have to give him space and let me lead him where I want him to go. And so I told him about what I was doing and we kind of parted ways. But then about a week later, he comes back to me. He says, Quentin, I had this dream. And in this dream, a fish latched on to me and we were walking together and there was nothing that I could do to shake this fish. And he's like, it's the weirdest dream I've ever had. And he woke up the next day and he asked God, what does this dream mean? And God took him all the way back to when we had breakfast and said, I want you to latch on to Quentin because I have a purpose for you. And in meeting with Doug, I realized that the purpose God has for us was to have a venture capital investment firm, not a private equity investment firm. And so we founded my current company, Coplanar Capital. But guys, I tell you all this to say, I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't stop and deal with the things that I was carrying into this calling. I couldn't walk in the fullness of it until I truly did a realistic assessment of where I was at. And I realized that I ranked really low when it came to my relationships and when it came to the way I was managing the finances of not only myself, but my entire family. And once those were submitted under God, then the Lord opened the door to a partner who had over 30 years experience, who has really been a great guide to me in the business now moving forward. So you're going to set goals. You're going to use that grow model. Then you're going to assess where you're at now so that you can determine, are you submitting everything to the Lord? You're going to do it this way because remember, in your mind, this is going to play over and over. Quentin didn't do it this way, so he had to start a business and shut it down until he properly assessed submitting everything to the Lord. Can we pause?
Yeah. Do you want to step out in the hallway? It's a little bit cool
Yes.
out there too.
If you don't mind.